On this episode of the LA Business Podcast, we talked to Deborah Haile, CEO of Tiny Global Footprints. And Deborah and her 8-year-old son, Jonah, are co publishing books, children's books together to inspire people to travel, young kids to travel. And we talk about the impact it has on Jonah and the benefits of entrepreneurial activities and what it teaches young children. We talk about how Deborah has made an impact with her book, even as the global pandemic wreaked havoc across the country. Let's jump right into this week's episode of the LA Business Podcast. Welcome to the LA Business Podcast, your destination to hear stories of how businesses grow and scale. I'm Robert Brill, CEO of Brill Media and the host of this podcast. Now, let's jump right into this week's interview. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the LA Business Podcast. Today our guest is Deborah Haile, CEO of Tiny Footprints. And Deborah has spent the last several years building a profitable publishing business with her 8-year-old son, Jonah. Jonah and Deborah, or Deborah and Jonah, are best-selling co-authors who love to share their world adventures and educate through travel. So, how did you get into publishing children's books? And tell me about the involvement with your son, Jonah.
Yeah, so my son Jonah, sorry he can't be here today, but he is having a summer vacation.
Sweet.
School is off; they're at the beach, and I'm working. But he and I just traveled a lot when he was younger, and it all started just a working mom, just having some time with my son. I felt like traveling was the only way that I could escape the day to day things that were pulling me to the right and to the left. And so we started traveling. And from that, a lot of people kept asking, how are you doing this? And I feel like you have a lot of time off to do it and a lot of money. And I was like, no, it's actually doable if you're able to, budget for it and able to just make it a priority in your family. And for us, it's a priority. And so from that, we decided to share our books, we decided to write books so that we could share our stories, so that we could inspire other kids and parents to travel the world together. And not only to travel, but also to just to learn what comes from traveling. So from that, our book publishing company was developed, Tiny Global Footprints. So in our books, we published 3 books, and they are all bestsellers, like you mentioned. 2 of the books is in the book series is called Jonah's Global Footprint. So it's basically Jonah going to all these different countries and bringing back a story from each of the countries.
Sweet.
Yeah, and then Jonah, my 8-year-old now, when he was 7, he published his own first book. It's called Basketball or Soccer. And he's very proud of it. So that's also teaching him entrepreneurship too, and how to be an author, and all the, things that go, all the moving parts that goes with it. So it's been a very interesting journey for us, and also evolving with the time and everything that's going on.
I'm sure I'm a parent. I have a 2.5-year-old, and I'm sure. I mean, literally, like he started like yesterday. He was trying to learn the letter W, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, had the word Hawaii on my shirt. He's like W, and he couldn't say it right. And so like that made me proud. I imagine your child publishing a book, his own story, made you exceptionally proud as a parent, right?
Yes, very proud moment. And I also like the fact that he's like, okay, done with this one. What's the next one? And now he's publishing his second one this year. This was his first one, like you said, the basketball and soccer. And the second one is Daddy and Me. He decided to write about him and Daddy and all the fun activities that he does. And also just made it into a mysterious, this kid trying to find more about his dad and what he does at work, because he's so curious about it. And so he wrote a whole book about it, emailed the editor, and he's like, I'm ready to go. And now he's ready for illustrations. He should be published in the fall.
How do you go about the process of working with a 7 or 8-year-old to publish a book? What are the steps you take?
So I make him write the stories. I kind of help him brainstorm ideas when he's thinking of writing a book. I have to tell him, okay, so how do we make it more interesting? Yes, that's an interesting topic for you, but then how do we make it more interesting for anybody to want to gravitate and want to get your book? So let's talk. So I ask him questions to kind of pick his brain. And then I make him write like an outline of different topics and different ideas he's thinking. And then we kind of like put it together. And I'm like, okay, then you have an idea. So, continue to write it. He wanted to write about him and daddy. And I said, yeah, but everybody will say, oh, I want to write about me and my dad too. But how do you spice it up to make it more interesting? Then he's like, well, I'm always curious about what daddy does. And I'm always asking him to go to work. And he always says, not this time. So I want to write about that because I want to go to work with him. He's like, you work at home. I see on video and calls all the time, but I don't know what daddy does. So I was like, okay, that's a good topic right there. So he started, so he wrote something about that, but also talk about their relationship and how, how he looks up to him and everything. So, which is great for a father and son to read and kind of get this idea of, how to have this bonding moment together. So with our books, I just poke around to see, to make him think like broader when it comes to writing books. And then once he has an idea going of what he wants it to be, then he just sits and he just types away in his laptop. And he makes after school, that's all he's been doing the last like 2 months. And then after that, we send it to the editor basically, and then going through the editing process. And then now that the editing's done, he's gonna send it to the illustrator. And he is very detailed. The first book I helped him, he sees me doing it, so I send her pictures of how we want the images to look and how we want the illustrations to look. So he kind of gives her direct examples of how he wants his books to look. And then with the editor, he goes back and forth with the editor too. Well, I want to add this and I want to add that. We'll have like a video chat with the editor to talk about it. And he's involved in the process. I have like videos of him just being very descriptive, and I see how he was with the first book and how he is now, his confidence level. He was like taking over the conversation, so which is amazing. We want to teach that to our kids, just even in their day-to-day life, to be confident.
So it's interesting, right? So you're effectively teaching Jonah entrepreneurship. It's almost like the benefit of like a school project, right? You do a school project, you learn something, you get some experience with it. And this is an ongoing passion that he can have and take with him and apply to whatever, because the
Yeah.
tenets are the same, right? You get something done, you iterate on it, you gain more confidence in the project and the tasks that you do, and then by the time you do it for 10 times, you feel very comfortable being right, being wrong, collaborating. Those are such great life skills.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I feel like that's another way another reason we travel too. From traveling, we get that too, like this ambiguous way of like, I don't know what's going to happen. We have an idea, we have an itinerary that we're supposed to follow and things that we're supposed to do, but things don't go according to plan all the time. So to kind of just when things don't go according to plan, how do you navigate that? How do you problem solve all these issues that come up? What happens if you get sick? What happens if you go to a country and you didn't think you were going to stay another night and you have to stay another night and you don't know the language? Stuff like that
Mhm.
that just pop up when you're traveling. He's been to 11 countries now. And from that, he's 8, so he is starting to remember the last few. But he has pictures, so he remembers obviously the other ones too. But he has like very descriptive memory of some of the stuff that we encountered in Thailand and some of the stuff encountered in South Africa and in Eritrea, in Dubai. So he's like, "Oh, mommy, remember when we had to stay overnight in Dubai and we didn't plan on it, and we had to get a hotel, we had to walk around and the gold souk to find it." I'm like, "Yeah, you remember that? You were 5 or 6, so I'm happy you do." So I feel like everything I try to teach, everything kind of like connects in a way. It's teaching them life lessons, to be to grow up to be a person that's able to problem solve and able to be confident in himself and the stuff that he's doing with the writing that teaches him that. So between our travels and our books and our business, the Tiny Global Footprints, it's like he's learning so much, and it's amazing how it has affected him as a person. And I see the growth in him, which is, like you said, the W made you proud, and this definitely makes me proud every day when
Of
he
course.
Yeah, he took over the conversation with the editor. He was like, "No, no, that's not how I was thinking. I was thinking," and I was like, "Okay, I'm not gonna say anything." So,
That's incredibly valuable.
yeah, I agree.
When you think about the business, did you set out to have Tiny Global Footprints be what was the fundamental goal for Tiny Global Footprints? Was it an entrepreneurial exercise for Jonah and your family? Is it like to make money? What's the mission here? Is it to learn how to do stuff? What's the mission here?
Yeah. So to be honest with you, when we started, like I said, we started it just us trying to inspire other families, children and kids and parents to travel the world. So none of my plans were to create a business out of it and create and make money out of it or anything like that. It just grew in that way though. Like not only the books, we're publishing more books, but also just we are we always we're in a lot of podcasts, a lot of radio shows, TV. Just became this entrepreneurial path and that I didn't really plan on, to be honest. I have a full-time career, so this was just something Jonah and I were doing. And then now it has taken over kind of like my thought on what I want to do, and it's giving me more I don't know, excitement and ammunition to keep going, but it's more to inspire families and parents, especially to take their children out of the bubble that we live in, and go far away, not just to like Mexico or Canada, but to go further away to Asia and Africa and just other parts of the world. So my whole goal with this is to inspire more families to travel the world and also to learn more cultures, and so that kids are not confined by the spaces we live in and the environments we live in, and they know that they can just touch the stars and be anything they want to be anywhere in the world.
As you think about the goal, the finances, the economics of Tiny Global Footprints, when do you start? How long have you been doing this? First of all, with Tiny Global Footprints. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, we changed the name. So it's been a few years, but I start and then I had to stop and then I'm going full course. So the last 3 years have been consistent,
Hmm.
and just going more and publishing more books. We have two books publishing this month. Like I said, the one Jonah's publishing by himself with Tiny Global Footprint. I mean, to the Daddy and Me for Tiny Global Footprints, and then the Jonah Global Footprints book series that would be the third book, basically. On
And
that.
how do you know when to like chase it? Like how do you know when to put money against it so that like how do you know when it's like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm getting some traction. At what point do you say, okay, now I'm going to spend some of my own money to really to amplify the message here, to grow the business? Like what's the decision making process there?
I think publishing the books are costly and PR is costly, and
Okay.
I have
Tell us about that. Tell us about publishing. I don't know anything about the
yeah.
self-publishing world.
Yeah, it's costly, and I think anybody can tell you that it's costly. And what's been hard with the first book was I didn't anticipate I was going to spend as much. So this is our second book. This is the Finding My Amigo in Cuba. That's the second book, and then this is the first book that was published, the Searching for Elephants in Thailand,
Yep.
and to publish the first book, I had to get coaches to help me really understand how to publish a book. I'm not an author, nor have I ever known how to do. I mean, you write books, but I didn't know the process either, and so that was costly for me because I had to get coaches to help me. The editing process was costly. Illustrations are costly, and then the PR part where you have to do, yes, it's not only Instagram. Now that we've gotten traction from podcast hosts and other media, it's been very, very helpful for us. But the thing is, there is also a cost associated to it when I'm doing like launch parties. And I had a launch party for my first book pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, we didn't do it with the second book because it was during COVID that we published it, and the
Sure.
third book was COVID too. But those were, so PR can cost you a lot, and like I said, like the illustrations are definitely costly, and a lot of people kind of get deterred away from publishing because of that. But I think it's I'm a big believer in budgets and just creating this is what I'm going to spend, and then finding resources to help you accomplish that goal also matters.
I
Um,
love that.
yeah, and I depend on Upwork and Freelancer a lot for a lot of my illustration. That's how I find my illustrator. My editor, I was able to find it through the coaching program that I'm part of. Um, but I negotiate with people when book covers and formatting and all these things that they have to do. So it's not only publishing books. Actually, I've been coaching as well. I have 5 of my clients are going to be publishing their book this year. Two have already published, and then I have 2 more coming up, or 3 more coming up, and so I coach them through the whole process because I don't want them to spend as much as I did, and I give them the resources that they need also to kind of go through the process, and being more cost effective for themselves. Because yeah, I didn't do it the wrong way the first time, but it was definitely more costly than the second and third time. So I think I've learned how to navigate myself through
Yeah,
it.
I mean, the first time you do anything, it's like you have the learning curve, and it's gonna be more painful, and
Mhm.
you're paying to learn, and that's good
Yeah.
experience because
Mhm.
that's that's the benefit of learning. You don't have it doesn't cost you as much the second, third, and 100th time around.
Right. And it's like with self-publishing, like I wanted the quality of my book to be good. I wanted it to be attractive to the eye. I wanted it to be attractive to any parent, to any kid, to any grandparent, to anyone that's
Mhm.
walking. And I don't want it to be like one of those books you see and it's like, oh, it's a self-published book. It doesn't look that attractive. So I spent a lot of money, and I still do, on my editing and on my cover and my illustrations, because that's what I'm selling, and that's what is my brand, and I have to make sure my brand has quality. So vetting through a lot of people who can do the same work, but then making sure it's within your budget, and then also they can accomplish the work that you want them to do, is key when it comes to publishing your book and becoming a self-published author.
So when you think about I mean, do you do any, in addition to, like, the launch and the PR, do you do any, like, other types of marketing and advertising activities to grow this business?
Yeah, I do it on Amazon and then other platforms. My Our book was on Barnes and Noble and Walmart, and I think Target was another one that's going to. So I have to do
That's your retail distribution?
right the retail distribution. So
Wow, that's great.
yeah, thank you. It's definitely difficult. Like it's a full time job. So when you have another a full time career, it's definitely hard to juggle. So with the budgeting, the financial finances aspect of it, I have to also be cautious of my timing because running a business is definitely a full time, obviously. And then, I have my son also who's in school. So it's juggling all these 3 things, aspects of my life that's hard: family, business, and then career. That's demanding, really. And so I do feel like I've been able to balance it well. And as the years go on, I've been able to find other ways to advertise, monetize other like celebrities and others to also talk about my book and review it. We have our supporters have been really amazing too, to just get the word out on our books. So it's not a sprint. I always say it's a marathon. So we're just going to keep going and keep heading towards the right way.
I think that's the number one mistakes entrepreneurs make. They think that with the possibility for explosive growth through social media, they need to do something crazy that's going to grab a lot of attention. But often that big attention grabbing event that people try to accomplish to go viral hurts them more than helps them, and it's not something that can be sustained. And I
Yep,
find separately on the other side that entrepreneurs who are really focused on the long term opportunity that a business can become, they have an opportunity to grow. You build muscle on how to learn on how to do something effectively when the stakes are relatively low, so that when the stakes get a lot higher, exponentially higher, you then have an opportunity to kind of like know you have the muscle to sustain that growth.
exactly. Yeah, I feel like it's important that it's organic, and that it's not forced. It's not a competition. It's not something that you are, like. I feel like social media makes us feel like we're behind, because I feel like when I look at other
Totally.
authors or other entrepreneurs that are like, or travel bloggers, because I travel blog as well, right? Like that's we are travel blog influencers. My son, mom and son travel blog influencers. So I see all these aspects of my business, or coaches that are getting a lot more clients, and then I see the parents and their kids traveling like a lot more than we are, and writing and blogging about it. And then I see authors that are publishing books back and forth. And it makes me feel like I'm behind in all these areas that I'm trying to accomplish. And it's
Right.
hard, it's really hard. So, but
Yeah, I mean that's a challenge with social media, right? Like it shows you the absolute best version of everyone and everything in every business you might see. And
yeah,
that's I mean, we all
exactly.
have flaws, we all have challenges, we all get out of bed, looking funny and our hair's crazy and whatever, but like we never show those photos and that's
All
not
right.
authentic. And what's ironic is like social media is really focusing on authenticity, but in reality, the totality of what you get on social media is anything but authentic. It's fake and glossy as Vogue and Elle and all those other publications.
Absolutely, absolutely. It really is. I have friends and family are always telling me, "Oh, I see your social media. You guys are doing great." And I'm like, "But you haven't." I was like, "That's my work. What you see is what I'm showing you. It's not what
Right.
I'm going through. You have no idea that I was crying yesterday because I had a miserable day at work, or something
Sure.
traumatic that happened with Jonah at school. Like, you don't know the stuff that are really happening." I feel like social media is just, again, a magazine, like you just said. It's just for show. It's not the struggles. And then they see also us being featured in different, articles and, platforms, podcasts, and they're like, "Oh my god, business is going great. You guys are like celebrities." And I'm like, "You have no idea how hard it
Yeah.
is."
Yeah, it's hard work, and as a business grows, you what I found as I've grown our business is that the risks remain equally as daunting. When the business starts out, the risks are relatively small, and when the business grows and you're doing exponential more work and exponential more revenue, whatever the case might
Yeah,
be, you're still taking the same risks. There's just like one or two more zeros attached to that financial risk, and it's still
absolutely.
daunting, and you still might lose, and that's it takes a special type of person. And I think what's interesting about your experience with your child Jonah is that he really is getting to see what it takes, the ins and outs of taking those risks. Because a lot of you know I have this really I have this opinion that like a lot of the education system in our country is really focused in on teaching us how to be good workers.
Yes,
And it's not
absolutely.
my yeah, right? But very little of school tells you how to be how to think and handle those risks, because the reality is life is incredibly risky. Getting out the door and getting to your car and driving to McDonald's is an incredibly risky behavior when you look at the totality of like traffic accidents in the country,
Right,
right?
right,
Every
right.
it's risky to be alive.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. Um,
Um
teaching
so
that to kids.
go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say teaching that to kids is so important, and I feel like Jonah learns a lot from that. It's a big deal for him to learn taking risks in figuring out, am I making the right decision or not? And I feel like, I don't know, these are life skills. School, he's learning things that he won't learn at school by traveling. He's learning stuff he
100%.
won't learn, when he's publishing these books. When he was talking to his class the other day, and he was explaining to them how it works, and they were so fascinated by it, including his teacher. And so, yes, I do think that these are life lessons that he's going to keep and hopefully grow. Mm.
So when COVID is happening and people are shut out of day-to-day stores and the world is changing, how does it affect your business? I imagine with parents being at home and children wanting to stay being educated at home through Zoom, there's a lot of upheaval, a lot of change. How does that do for sales of your book? What did you do during that period to push forward Tiny Global Footprints?
um to be honest with you, I could say I can't say, actually, I can't say that I was successful the whole entire time. I think in the beginning, we moved from Washington, D.C. to Miami because I wanted to just get away from the hectic lifestyle that I had over there. And when we moved to Miami, I don't know, it took things took turn because that was in March when I moved here last March. And everyone, everyone was in quarantine. We didn't know anyone. And here, and we have some family, but not a lot. So believe it or not, I couldn't concentrate on the business. I just couldn't. I was like, I wanted to write or I was in the middle of writing this book, and the plan was to publish the Finding My Amigo in Cuba, and I couldn't finish it. I don't know what the struggle was. I don't know if it was like I was just so stressed with, everything that was going on and just being home. And Jonah was homeschooling, and he's been homeschooling ever since then too. So it was a lot to take in. And I think what helped me was I had to create a schedule, I had to create goals, but I didn't do that till this year. I did publish this book last year. So I was like, oh, kudos. At least you did that. That was the only thing I did last year. But I had a lot planned. I mean, if you saw my vision board for 2020, it was packed. And I don't think I accomplished, and I think maybe three big things from there. I bought a condo and I published a book. So I'm like, okay, at least I did two big things. So I won't
That's
be
great.
myself. Thanks.
What does it look like for 2022? Like what how do you scale the business?
Yeah. So to scale the business, what I've done, like on last year was, or this year, the beginning of this year, was just I created a extensive budget, a schedule, and what I want in our goals. Like what are we doing? What's my target? Like what am I trying to hit? How many clients am I trying to get for my coaching? How many books are we trying to publish with the Jonah Global Footprints? Is Jonah publishing his own? Then if so, like how many? Because that's also going to be costly for the publishing part.
Sure.
um, and also and then doing like author visits with schools and doing more PR with like podcasts and articles being featured. Like I wanted to push for that this year, and believe it or not, we've been featured in over 10 platforms. And it's in growing. In That's excluding podcasts and countless podcasts. So it's been great. So I've been hitting my goals in that way, and I'm happy about that. But also there's also the hardships of not meeting those goals because I am working full time. I'm in the legal field, and it's very demanding, and then I do have a child who is being homeschooled. So with him it's also another, I have to, when he's like, oh, it's lunchtime, mommy, we gotta go take a walk or something because we've been home all day, and I'm like, oh god, I have an email to respond to, I have a call. but
Legit.
but I have to do it. But I'm like, okay, time out, and just like going out and taking that 10-minute walk with him or 8-minute walk with him always helped. And then bring back lunch. And just, we had a very good schedule that worked for us. And I blocked off my calendar for work to, things that I'm working on, like during lunchtime for him. I blocked off during my work schedule when it comes to the podcast interviews and other interviews that we're doing. And then also we did a lot of book selling workshops that we're doing. So how do we sell more books, basically? So I'm taking courses on that, and also trying to help my clients sell their books as well. There's a lot of ins and outs with that goes, and that goes along with the PR and marketing. So I've just been focused on the PR and marketing heavily, and then producing and publishing more books. Um,
Very cool.
so two more books coming out this year,
How
basically.
can tell us what's your website and how can people find you, Deborah?
Yeah. So our website is tinyglobalfootprints.com, and our Instagram is tinyglobalfootprints. And DM us and email is hello@tinyglobalfootprints. So if you do Tiny Global Footprints, we're easy to find. And Jonah is sad that he's not here. Maybe next time he can join. And he's a bit of a character, so you could get his perspective of entrepreneurship too.
He's very cute. What a cute
Yeah,
little boy.
thank
And
you so
looks like he has a lot of personality.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. He
Deborah
does.
Haile, CEO of Tiny Global Footprints. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the LA Business Podcast. If you like what we're doing on this podcast, please consider subscribing on Apple or Google Play, leaving a 5-star review, and sharing with your friends. If you have any questions, comments, or recommendations for a guest you'd like to hear on this podcast, please email me, robert@brillmedia.co. Thank you. Have a fantastic day.